Monsieur le Président,
Co-chairs, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to welcome the convening of this high-level conference at a time when, following almost 2 years of war in Gaza, the suffering of civil society is at fever pitch. At a time when the world is deeply upset by the humanitarian situation in the region, we, representatives of United Nations member states, have a moral and a political duty to establish the conditions for lasting peace in the Middle East, a region which is undergoing this ordeal for decades now. The time has come to settle the question of Palestine. The settlement, in our view, can only occur through the implementation of the two-state solution. Andorra fully supports this solution, a solution underpinned by international law and the conditions set forth inter alia in successive United Nations resolutions as well as the Madrid Peace Initiative. Andorra, drawing on its 700-year history of peace, has historically been deeply committed to the principle of neutrality. Over the last 2 years, we've followed with great disquiet the situation unfolding in the Middle East, and in particular the situation in Gaza. Repeated violations of international law as well as humanitarian law have led us to a position of active neutrality. We firmly and repeatedly condemned the terrorist attacks perpetrated by Hamas in Israel on the 7th of October 2023. We've called for the release of hostages. At the same time, we've expressed deep regret at just how violent the response to these attacks is. We also regretted indiscriminate attacks on civilians, which have claimed the lives of almost 60,000 people, the majority of them women and children. This spiral of violence has resulted in a catastrophic humanitarian situation, with access to civilians already facing a terrible situation obstructed. The situation is, let me repeat it, unbearable. Andorra would like to once again call for an immediate and lasting ceasefire as well as respect for international humanitarian law, as well as the unconditional release of all hostages. We've supported the resolutions adopted by the United Nations General Assembly, resolutions calling for the protection of civilians, for a guarantee of safe and unfettered access for humanitarian aid going into Gaza, as well as for the protection of humanitarian personnel in accordance with international law. Against this backdrop, we'd like to reiterate our full support for UNRWA, which has many of its humanitarian workers among the victims. In our view, UNRWA remains an indispensable actor in the field. Ladies and gentlemen, aggression is never the solution. Violence is never the answer. Terror is never the solution. The solution lies in dialogue. The solution requires respect for international law. Andorra has already spoken in favor of Palestine becoming a fully fledged member of our organization. Constructive dialogue, bringing together all actors under the same conditions, bringing them to the table, can only be of benefit for a lasting solution. We stand ready to take an additional step. Our government is working so that in the near future we can be in a position to recognize the state of Palestine. Co-chairs, since the adoption of Resolution 79/81 by the General Assembly in December of last year, the 8 working groups working under your auspices have considered the various aspects paving the way for peace in the Middle East on a viable and robust basis. As we prepare to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, it is high time to renew and to reiterate our commitments to the principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter. This conference is the time to prove that we are actors forging effective and inclusive multilateralism. Multilateralism which goes beyond our differences and allows us to come up with solutions to complex crises. I stand convinced that we will manage to garner the necessary consensus to achieve a viable solution, together with a realistic roadmap and the means for effective action. I thank you.
Je remercie la ministre.
I thank the